All right, boys, it's game day. Let's go. Let's go. Big game. Got a big game today. My package has arrived. Oh, sweet. Nice. Score! Great win, fellas. What game's next? G-men are having a great year. Let's go blue! Here we go. Prime time football. Texans, Dolphins. Let's do this. Yes! Review. Yes! Yes!
Heartland Flags. Every sport, every team, every flag.
Every team?
That's right.
Fine. I'll get a Washington flag too.
Find your flag and so much more with fast, free shipping. Heartlandflags.com. Every sport, every team, every flag. Almost.
Loyal.
Heartland Flags and Gifts presents Legends and Listeners with Scott Dochterman and Chad Leistikow. Fly 'em high and fly 'em proud. Find your flag at heartlandflags.com. Breaking down the Big Ten from the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome into the Channel Seed Studios for a Big Ten championship game episode of Legends and Listeners here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. Chad Leistikow here talking of the Des Moines Register with you as always, and really happy to discuss Saturday's game with award-winning Hawkeyes beat writer Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. I'm going to keep doing it, Scott. This is our 16th episode together, Scott, and we may do, who knows, we may do 500 episodes of Legends and Listeners in our time. We may never do another Big Ten championship game preview with Iowa in it, so let's have some fun, and let's see if we can carve a path to Iowa being competitive on Saturday night in Lucas Oil Stadium. How does that sound?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a logical operation for us to do. I don't think many people are doing that on podcasts these days, but there is a path, Chad. We know that there's a path because it's not just ordained. It's difficult. It's not conventional. It's unorthodox, but it can happen. I mean, David did throw a rock and kill Goliath.
We need to pull out the Hoosiers movie clips here and the pastor or whatever.
Hey, it's in Indianapolis.
That's right.
So maybe you got Norman Dale / Kirk Ferentz bugging out with a tape measure doing the goalposts and stuff.
Yeah. Who's as Deacon Hill, Jimmy Chitwood then, or who's Dennis Hopper?
Dennis Hopper. Brian. Hey, you.
Wearing the all black sweatshirt, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I mean, I think Jimmy Chitwood would probably be Cooper DeJean. Unfortunately, that's
right. Yeah, good point.
He's more like Ray. I think his name was. We got the winning the trophy case.
Yeah, and I'm not comparing Brian to Dennis Hopper's character, by the way. It was just a total joke. Total joke, everyone. Total joke. I do want to lay out the challenge, Scott. Michigan is a really, really good team. Number 13 in the country in scoring offense, and that might be the least impressive stat that they have. 50% on third downs, number 1 in scoring defense. J.J. McCarthy, 24-1 as a starter, that only loss being to TCU. Blake Corum, the running back, FBS, 22 touchdowns. He's scored in every single game this season. Michigan, 24 straight wins against Big Ten conference competition. That includes 2 against Iowa, by the way. Michigan has scored in 34 out of 36 quarters in Big Ten play this season, so they just are a consistent outfit that puts points on the board. And then if you think you got an advantage somewhere, they've got a good punter, and they're the least penalized team in the country. Oh, by the way, they're also plus 14 in turnovers this year, Scott, having only fumbled twice and only thrown 5 interceptions as a team all season long. J.J. McCarthy, 1 interception in Big Ten play, 9 games. This challenge is very steep, Scott. What stands out to you most about how good this Michigan team is before we outlay the path of victory?
Oh, it's like spin the wheel. Good here, good here, good here, good here, good. There's no weaknesses, and that's the tough thing. That's why creating a path to victory is like taking machetes out in the Amazon forest. It's like which way are we going to try to go? And I get eaten or swallowed up by an anaconda. So I think when you look at Michigan, the most impressive thing to me is quarterback play. That's really been the separation for Michigan from being good to great, from being great to elite. And the way J.J. McCarthy has played for the most part is put them in that position to where if they're not the favorite, they're the co-favorite to win the national title. To complete 74% of his passes and to play in an offense that's not, bubble screens and short hitches and do all those types of things, but to actually move the ball down the field, to me, is probably the most impressive because, yes, they have an outstanding offensive line. They have one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the country. But they've been able to do that in the past. They've had good running games. But to have a quarterback complete that type of passes, to be a difference maker, to throw last week, the thread that he threw for down near the goal line was just unreal. And I think that's
I don't know how they got past it. That pass got in there. I still don't know.
Yeah. So that's probably the one area of the many that stands out to me as, wow, this is different.
Want to remind folks that Legends and Listeners brought to you every week by Heartland Flags and Gifts, which offers free shipping anywhere in the U.S., always with fresh products, nearly every team, every sport, and every flag. Holiday season, great time to get those orders in early. So visit our good friends online at heartlandflags.com or in store at 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. That's hard to say. 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. A lot of S there.
Yes. Good thing that Des Moines doesn't have an S and
Yeah, at least they're silent. That makes it easier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where to begin, Scott? You wrote a pretty awesome piece on The Athletic. I want to give you a lot of credit for that about Iowa's 14-13 victory in 2016. I wrote this morning about 5 must-dos for Iowa to win the game, thinking they got to go 5 for 5. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with yours, the 5 for 5, the drive for 5. Cut off the 300 part, like they did with the points. But let's start with the drive for 5 for Chad and discuss that, and then we'll kind of sprinkle in the 14-13 win, which was a borderline miracle at the time, and even would be a greater one now.
Yeah. Just reading through your story, I encourage folks to do that at The Athletic. Really, you forget. You think, oh yeah, Iowa was a really plucky underdog, but man, they just had a lot of walk-ons on the field. Mm-hmm. Their best players were out. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Michigan was incredibly elite. But anyway, we outlined how good Michigan is. All right, you guys have heard enough about that. So my number one thing here, and we don't have to go like in depth on all 5 of these, but my number one thing, and hopefully I'll mention all 5 by the time we're done. I don't mind rehashing it. I hope you guys read it at hawkcentral.com.
Yeah.
Is score early and then get a stop. It's a lot to ask. Michigan has only had its defense on the field for 1 possession this year while trailing. That's an incredible stat. It came against Indiana, by the way, and they won that game 52-7. But you know this, Scott, as well as Iowa fans do. And Iowa's best offense is usually that early script with Brian Ferentz. That is when he is at his best. Iowa typically, I would be surprised if they don't start with the football. Either they're going to win the toss and take the ball, or Michigan's going to win the toss and defer. I'd be shocked if that's not the case. So that's your chance to score early, get in front. The last thing you want to do, Scott, to start this formula is get behind. 3 and out, punt, get down. Got to score early. Then you got to get that stop. You can't just get a field goal and let them go down and get 7. But that's step 1 for me.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Chad. I mean, I think I anticipate that they'll get the ball first, and whether it's at the 25 or the 26 or 23, it doesn't really matter. But from there, they're going to have to find a way to advance the football, and score early is essential. even to pare it back from that a little bit would be get the ball close to midfield, get a couple of first downs, have a little bit of success moving the ball forward. So that way, if they do punt, that they have a chance to place Michigan, in an adverse situation. And, maybe they get the ball to the 47 and 2 first downs, punt, and Torrey Taylor pins them in the 9-yard line. Well, then they got to go 91 yards on you. And yeah, they're capable of it, but that's the more difficult task. But I agree wholeheartedly that scoring is, even if it's a field goal, it gives you confidence and it moves the ball against one of the best defenses in the country. And if you can experience that joy of taking a lead and your defense can hold, force a punt, play offense with the lead, even if it's 10 minutes to go in the first quarter, it feels different. It gives you a different confident vibe. You're not going to score on every possession. And I think more people would be surprised if they scored on 3 versus 0. But I do think you're right on that.
Yeah, Iowa's over-under point total in this game is 6.5. So that should tell you how little Iowa was expected to score by odds makers. But what you laid out, even not scoring, Scott, is sort of what happened with Penn State. Iowa got a couple first downs early, punted, pinned them back, did get that 3 and out, got the punt back, and then, of course, Eric all fumbled. You just can't have that type of thing. And that kind of leads into my second point, which was 0 turnovers on offense. Has to be 0 and create at least 1 on defense. Another huge challenge with what Michigan does offensively. But it's just not going to be a winning formula to do what you did against Penn State. Have a ball go off Brendan Diaz-Fernandez's back with Cooper DeJean pointing. That wasn't invalid, by the way. Or the Eric all fumble. You just can't have those things because even then, those 2 things, Iowa was down 10-0 at half at Penn State, right?
Yeah.
Those were the 2 things that pretty much led to that.
Yeah.
So you just can't do that. That's where I'm at. It has to be a 0 turnovers. You can't turn it over on offense.
Absolutely. And with Iowa, even if there's a turnover, you cannot take points off your board or add points to theirs. And meaning you can't have a strip sack at your own 27 that leads to a field goal or a touchdown, or you can't be inside the red zone and fumble, like Eric All did. And that, he's not even playing and it was a tough hit and everything anyway, but you can't have those situations to where it provides you, -3 to -6 points. That's absolutely killer. And as you said, they value possessions anyway. Iowa does. They treasure them. They put them in a lockbox, and the quarterback has to be the same way. Deacon Hill. I mean, Spencer Petras was, you deride him on a lot of different things, but he did value the ball, no question. And I think that's something that Deacon Hill is going to have to be. There's no sin in punting. You're going to have to maximize your possessions, but man, you turn it over against this team, and then defensively. This hasn't been Iowa's strength this year like it was 2 years ago, to where they turned over Cade McNamara when he was the quarterback. They got some interceptions back then, but they just they're going to have to force something. And that very well could be from the very beginning, maybe Jay Higgins, who is a heavy hitter, maybe hits Blake Corum and he fumbles and everybody's like, whoa, we haven't seen a lot of this. And the ball's on the ground. And then, then you got to capitalize. Absolutely have to execute after a turnover.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like the Rocky scene. He's cut. Cut. Yeah. Maybe you get that rare turnover. Michigan's lost 2 fumbles all year. I think I said that earlier, but man, that's important to stress. And then this is even more of a crazy stat, Scott, that of the 7 turnovers that Michigan has committed, their defense has only allowed 9 points, 3 field goals off those turnovers. So even if you get the turnovers, they haven't given up a touchdown off of it. So the challenge is steep, I know, but no turnovers. Spencer Petras did throw a pick on the very first play at Ohio State last year. It's that type of game. You just can't do that stuff. Alex Padilla fumbles the snap his first play in the second half. I mean, just can't. Just can't do that.
Punter taking off with the ball. I mean, I mean, that was it would be a comedy of errors if it was funny for other people to watch, but that was such a devastating game, and that's what's capable of happening if you allow that to happen. So,
Yeah. All right. Now I'll kind of merge a couple of these here to in the interest of time. But like my number 3 is get off the field on 3rd down and 4th down because Michigan is elite on 3rd downs. They're even more elite on 4th downs. They're 14 out of 18 this year, 78% on 4th downs. And why are they so good? Well, it's because they have a lot of 3rd and shorts, and they have a good running game and a really efficient quarterback. It's like an NFL offense. Give Tom Brady or Joe Burrow a 3rd and 2, and probably going to convert it, right? So, got to get off the field though. So how do you get off the field? You got to create 3rd and longs somehow, and it could come down to the rush defense, Scott. The reason I bring up the 4th down is I think Michigan will go for a lot of 4th downs if it's 4th and short. And I mean, maybe not in their own territory, but because you're not afraid of Iowa's offense hurting you if you do turn it over, and controlling the ball against that Iowa defense and wearing them down is going to be a good strategy. So yeah, you just got to get off the field, and it's a blank statement, and they're not going to be perfect on it, but you can't give up what you did last year, Kinnick, which was 5 drives, and suddenly the 3rd quarter is over and you're down 20-0. Michigan scored on 4 of those 5 drives. They were long drives, and the one they didn't score on was a punt. I think it had to do with a penalty. Maybe was in there. So it's really rare to stop them. But yeah, get off the field on 3rd and 4th down.
Yeah. And this is kind of like the analogy with baseball with a pitcher and the count. First pitch, strike. You want to get ahead of the count. And that's kind of like 1st down. You want to make sure that they're want to get ahead of the chains. You want to put them behind the chains. It's if they're running the ball, make it 2nd and 9. If they're passing the ball, incomplete, then it's 2nd and 10. Then you take away an element. Well, are they going to run, or just, Iowa does. Iowa always runs after an incomplete pass on 1st down, but some teams don't. But then, then they're trying to set up a 3rd and manageable. Well, you've got to take away those elements. You've got to put them in adverse situations. So early in the series matters for later in the series, because if you get to 3rd and 2, 4th and 1 against this team and they're committed to going for it, forget it. If it's 3rd and 1, you might as well just start playing on a 1st down, and not to concede because you can always stop them and all that. But you know what I'm saying, that it's just, it's not, you're hoping, you're not planning. And so I think at this point, that's probably the best thing that they're going for.
Iowa number 1 in the country defensively and allowing 20-plus yard plays. Michigan number 2. So big plays are going to be tough to come by on offense as well. But my number 4, Scott, and I want to get your take on this, is you got to throw some deep shots. You got to try to get big chunks downfield. I believe that's why I tweeted the Tavon Smith touchdown, the only one Iowa scored in the Big Ten championship game history in 8 quarters.
Yeah.
I think that is the preferred strategy to moving the ball with your quarterback's arm strength. Your pass pro is way better than it was 2 years ago. And I just don't know if you can – maybe you can. I just don't know if you can chip your way down the field consistently against this Michigan defense. So I think you've just got to take your shots. So I said connect on a couple of deep shots. It's a lot to ask. Again, talking about going 5 for 5 here on my musts. That's right. To do it in a different way offensively.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was going to have to connect somewhere, because ultimately you want to run the football. That's how Iowa is going to bleed the clock. It's going to keep its defense off the field, which it has to do. But in order to do that, you've got to go up against, you're probably going to go up against a lot of man. You're going to go, and so you're going to have to take advantage of those opportunities. And you're going to get some one-on-one coverages, and some point you're going to have to go down the field. I'm glad Deontay Vines appears like he's going to be back. He's one of the better deep ball route runners for Iowa. And same thing with Seth Anderson. I think those are the players you're going to have to target down the field at least a couple of times. Probably more sane, it would be more go routes on the edge, because you might still, the safety will be later to get over there, but you're also going to have to hold your protection a little bit too. So which may mean you may need to keep a back end a block or a tight end in the block. So there's just a lot of different variants here that I think, but if Iowa can hit a long pass, then they got to be cognizant of that, which enables them to force their safeties back a little bit and backpedal a little bit at the second level, which could help aid the running game. Because Iowa's 9-0, Chad, when they run for 100 yards this year. And that's better than they've been, really. I think there's been twice that they've done it since 2018, but they haven't really done that with any consistency the last couple of years. So if Iowa can get into a position where they're running effectively, but they're going to have to make sure they pass to do it.
Well, and that's one of the few strengths that Deacon Hill has, is he does have arm strength, so he can do it. He's been overthrowing a lot of those because he just guns the heck out of it. But I don't, maybe in a dome condition, he's locked in. You hit that just like C.J. Beathard. C.J. Beathard.
Yeah. Johnson.
Yeah. So Iowa did have like some extra protection. It was like a max protect almost on that play, and Beathard had a ton of time to throw on that 85-yard touchdown. All right, last one. And this is a good segue because it leads right into your story, Scott. Score on defense. They did in 2016 against Michigan. It was a safety by Jaleel Johnson that really turned that game. Ultimately, those 2 points were instrumental in a 14-13 win. They obviously scored on defense the following year against Ohio State. Again, a huge ask. Iowa's only scored one defensive touchdown this year, but they did have really clutch safeties against Wisconsin and Illinois in really important wins. So score on defense is my fifth and final must to get to the win. So that leads us into your conversation about that 2016 game. What stands out to you about how they did it?
Wow. Then there are a couple of elements that you have to remove from that, which makes it more challenging, I think, even in that situation in retrospect. But as we both remember, Chad, going to Happy Valley when they gave up 599 yards, including 359 on the ground. Saquon Barkley accused him of quitting. Joe Moorhead had Phil Parker in his back pocket all night. He just had no answer for that. So there were a lot of questions. And coming into that game against Michigan, similar type statistics, especially on defense. I think they allowed 19% on third down on defense going into that game. But there were two elements that Iowa doesn't have that it did have then. One, Kinnick Stadium. There's just no replicating Kinnick Stadium at night. And two was an NFL quarterback in C.J. Beathard. Now, the other parts were this team had a lot of injuries, depleted off wide receiving core, a lot of makeshift offensive line. I think this one is probably a little bit better than that one. And it had an edge that it competed with all week, which I assume this team does too, because it's been much maligned all year, but especially this week. I'm sure they're listening to everybody saying, "Oh, you guys can't win. You guys are terrible, whatever." How do they do it? Well, they're down 10-0 in the second quarter, and it looked like, oh man, this game's over. But to me, the game-changing play was LaShawn Daniels' 16-yard run right after that Michigan touchdown. It was as physical of a run as we've seen at Iowa, maybe since Sean Green knocking out Frank Duong. And that was, he hit the hole on an inside zone and leveled two players. And, and they weren't at the same time. One was at 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. One was 9 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And both, hit the turf, and then he got dragged down for 16 yards. The whole dynamic of that game changed. You saw the team get energized. You saw the sidelines get energized. They did work in concert with one another, the physicality. They did not score on that drive. However, they put themselves in a position at midfield, and this is what can be applicable. The Ron Caluzzi punts, they down it at the 2-yard line. Here's where your scoring and defense comes in. Second play, they tried to pass on third down and first down, they got away with it. Michigan did. Second down, Jaleel Johnson, put Davion Smith in a like a little roll. He looked like a cinnamon roll at the Amana Colonies, and it's like, and safety. Then a couple possessions later, Akram Wadley was tremendous in that game. And they got the ball to him. He made a lot of moves. They got down the field. And Greg Davis made a great call. It was a 4th down call.
Yeah.
Listening to the broadcast again the other day, everybody expected Iowa to go for the field goal. It's like, no. And they got the look they wanted. Double A gap blitz, slid Akram Wadley around, and Beathard, was like, I just needed to make sure I got it above the defenders, and I knew it would be a touchdown, and it was. And then, of course, Adrian Falconer dropped the 2-point conversion pass. But by then, 10-8 going into halftime. If I would take that yesterday and tomorrow and next week if they can get that. So that to me is how they started that whole thing. And you were there, you remember it.
Yeah, no, it's I remember the punt and the safety, but I'm glad you brought up the LaShawn Daniels run. And yeah, I just remember Akram Wadley being tremendous in that game. You have to have difference makers. We're going to get to some difference makers, I believe, in a little bit here. And then I want to give credit to Greg Davis in that game too. The quarterback draw to CJ Beathard, totally out of character based on their alignment and stuff that set up Mr. Keith Duncan for the winning field goal, the first of 2 in his Hawkeye career. But good stuff. Did you get you had amazing quotes in that story? Were those all pretty recent or
no? This is what's entertaining is that I plan to do an oral history on that. And so after the season, I talked to a lot of those players on the side about it, and I never did it. Part of it.
Oh, wow.
I was with Atlanta 10 and we bit the dust and a bunch of stuff. But I had that. I went back and found my file. And I was like, well, right. I had 10,000 words of
That's
quotes
awesome.
and so many that I didn't have. And the only ones that were recent were from Kirk, just kind of a slight recall, and George Kittle that I talked to in the spring. And then it was, and then you start to look and you're like, okay, that player is still in the NFL. So is that one. So is this one. Jaleel Johnson just got signed again. And, but the Greg Davis call on the draw was the most uncharacteristic play of the season and maybe in the Ferentz era, because when they had all those injuries, every time over the last, from game 4 all the way through the bowl game, every single time they had 3 wide receivers and they were in the shotgun, they attempted a pass. And we want to talk about predictability. That's off the charts. That was the only run. 74 out of 75 plays were called passes, except that one. And it got the first down, and and that's what you got to do. And that, that's small in scope, but that's the kind of play calling that has to happen that Michigan's not expecting.
Yeah. And that's a great reminder that, Brian Ferentz does have a chance to make an impact on this game with whatever he calls. I mean, there will be important moments potentially for Iowa to swing this game one way or another. And it's got to make the right calls and they got to execute. Scott, at last check, Iowa was a 21.5-point underdog at Circa Sports. The over-under 35 points. Circa Sports is the exclusive sports betting app of Iowa everywhere. Circa is sports betting the way it should be, with the highest limits, lowest holds, and the best odds. Download the app today at the App Store or at circasports.com. The line's coming down just a little bit. It got as high as 24. Now it's 21.5. Maybe there's a little bit of, buying Iowa when it crept up. Who knows? But one thing I wanted to talk to you about was, who can be difference makers? We talked about Akram Wadley in that 2016 game. Certainly CJ Beathard at the controls. You mentioned Jaleel Johnson. Of course, you still had Desmond King. I mean, George Kittle was out that game. Yeah. So, likewise, Luke Lachey, Eric All, maybe that's similar. Matt Vandenberg was expected to be a really key receiver on that team, and he was out. He got hurt in the 4th game, I believe, that year.
Yeah.
Iowa was limited offensively, so that sounds familiar. But who could be? I thought maybe we could pick 3 each. Maybe go down the list of guys that Iowa still has that can maybe make a difference in this game, because Michigan has one at every single position. Iowa's got to have their best players make plays. Where would you start, Scott?
I'm going to go on offense, and I'm going to go with Addison Ostrenga. I've been really impressed with the way he's performed since, first since Lachey went down, and then since Eric All, he has really developed into, I think, a quality tight end. He's up to 250 pounds. He's blocking it with a real strength. I mean, the play that Caleb Johnson scored on, he drove his guy vertically for, 7-8 yards up the field. It did the same thing on the Caleb Brown touchdown, week before, so I really like the way he's doing it. And he's a really good receiver. I think we're seeing somebody, we've seen so many good tight ends. I don't know that I want to compare him to somebody. That's just kind of almost unfair, but at this level, he's maybe like sophomore era, Sam Laporta. And I think if he can continue to do that, that's great. But in this game, he might be able to get free and have get a couple of receptions, maybe a bootleg in the flat that he turns up the field, breaks a tackle, and it goes for 20 yards or something like that. So that would be my number one. Chad, who do you have?
Well, let me ask you one quick follow-up on that, and then I will go. Iowa went a ton of 3 tight end, 13 personnel against Nebraska. Do you expect that to continue? Do you think that can work against Michigan, or was that a Nebraska specific because of the 3-3-5 that they run?
I think it was both. I mean, Nebraska had a really good run defense, and you have more heavy personnel. You can really attack it. I don't know if you can be that effective with it, but let's say this. If you're in 13 personnel against Michigan, they're going to expect a heavy run. That's when you pass, and one play that I remember specifically this year, and this was going back way, way, way back to the Iowa State game. And it was 10-0, and it was early in the second quarter. And Lachey had already been really good. They scored a touchdown. They got the ball, like their own 20. And when I was sitting next to Tom Kakert, and all of a sudden I saw 22 personnel on there. And I said, okay, this is when you hit them deep. This is you play fake off the first snap, and then you've got them because they're expecting you to run. And what did they do? They ran, and they got a 5-yard loss. And then it just bogged down offensively. And that's second quarter. That's been a really hellacious time for Iowa this year. So, I expect them to run a lot of 13 because it's been effective for them, but they're going to have to do something that Michigan's not prepared for, which is probably pass out of it and maybe even get vertical once in a while out of it.
Good analysis there. I appreciate that. I was curious what you thought. My number one, or I don't know if he's number one, but is Sebastian Castro. I'm kind of like really disappointed that he was only an honorable mention all Big Ten coaches. I think that was, I guess Luke Fickell didn't vote, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe his SID voted. I don't know, but yeah, he's a difference maker. He can pop a big tackle. He's got good hands. He's got the one defensive touchdown for the Hawkeyes this year. Who knows? Maybe he's got a little chip on his shoulder off that. I voted him first team. In the media ballot. He did make second team media, but I thought he was like a sure first teamer, and I was shocked. But anyway, Sebastian Castro, a guy that could be a difference maker in the run game. Sounds like he just kind of has a feel for when he blitzes now, and they trust him to do that, which is pretty cool. That's a lot of freedom to give a guy, and so he can make an impact at a lot of levels. That's one of my guys.
Boy, he could make a real impact next year, too, if he makes that decision. I would say, hey, see, this is what everybody thinks of you. You should come back and be an All-American.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they could absolutely use him. No, that's a great one, Chad. I would also – now I'll stick on defense. And I'm going to go with Deontay Craig. He's had a nice year, a good year, not a great year. He's in his hometown. They're going to need some sort of edge rush. And they haven't had a lot of that this year. They've had a nice year, 24 or 22 sacks, not Iowa standard, which has been 30 plus. And they're going to need that. And I think that somebody on the defensive line is going to have to step up and make, plays for negative loss. They're just going to have to do something like that. And this is his time to shine. I mean, the spotlight is there. He didn't play a whole lot. As we know, last week he's been kind of dinged up, but I think this is that opportunity against obviously an elite level team to make your presence known. And if you can do that, you can impact the game in so many ways. forcing bad passes, forcing incompletions, but just forcing double teams, which singles up somebody like Y.A. Black against a second team guard, because Zach Zinter is out for the season with a broken leg. So Deontay Craig is kind of one of my X factors in this one too.
Yeah, that's a good sneaky pick there. I feel like Iowa did a good job last week not playing. It's kind of banged up guys. Logan Jones didn't play. I thought that was really smart not to do that. Deontay played 6 snaps, so that's why Ethan Hurkett had such a huge role. Yeah. Obviously stepped up and did a great job. But, yeah, I feel like it's good news also this week that Jennings Dunker's back, Caleb Brown's back. It feels like you're not healthy, but you're at least you got Connor Colby came back after that injury against whoever it was a couple weeks ago. And it was nice to see him out there and doing well. So I'm going to go on offense now, Scott. And one guy that has been kind of sporadic all year, but certainly has big play potential. We've seen it for 2 years now is Caleb Johnson. So I think you've just got to, he usually only plays 14 to 18 snaps a game and gets about 10 carries, but that's a guy that could take one to the house. He's got that speed. He's got that athletic ability to get to the edge and pop a crease. And I think you just got to keep trying it and hope maybe one of those pops. That's one of the best ways Iowa can maybe move the ball on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. He's got home run ability, and he's, to me, of the 3, he's probably got the most upside. LaShawn Williams has been the most productive, no question, and the yards speak to it, but the style and the way he's been able to manufacture yards in key areas. But when Caleb Johnson, if he can reach his potential, I think he's the one that can be next level player. I'm not quite sure that. I look at LaShawn as kind of like Mekhi Sargent, maybe a little bit quicker, but I think that you're right. That's another one. Finally, there's a lot of different directions. Obviously we can go. I would not put Torrey Taylor in there because I think he's more than an X factor. I think he's got to be, an impact player for sure. And I know one player you mentioned, I won't, but I'm going to go with Jamari Harris. He intercepted a pass against Cade McNamara 2 years ago, sat out. He has to be the number 1 corner now. He is the number 1 corner. He's the guy that, he missed the first 2 games. At times he's been pretty good for the most part, but he's struggled a little bit from here to there. I think this is a showcase position for him too, to where he might be the one to take the ball away if they're throwing to the outside, because he's going to be guarding, Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson and some really good receivers, and they're going to test him. They're also going to test Deshaun Lee, but I haven't elevated him to an X factor yet. He's got some tough stuff coming up, but I will elevate Jamari Harris. That maybe he can get a breakup. Maybe he can play that role of Manny Rugamba, to 2016.
Yeah, so, good recall. Yeah,
I
like that.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah, a guy that's been quiet all year. We'll finish it up here. X factor, X.
Yeah.
1 interception all year. Came in the very first game. Was Iowa's first interception of the year. Has not had one since. Obviously dealing with a hand injury. But you got a 5-star in your secondary, Xavier Wampa. We've seen, Scott, what he has done at Southeast Polk. We saw it in the Music City Bowl last year. If he can just get his hands on the football and get it in his hands, maybe he can make something special happen. You don't have Cooper DeJean, the Big Ten DB of the year. But you do have Xavier Wampa. You have a 5-star in your defensive backfield. It's been quiet. Maybe it's an X factor. He's got, maybe he's the guy that sneaks up. Maybe they forget about him and he, undercuts something over the middle and boom.
Yeah.
He's running into that end zone Tavon Smith did, and the 7,000 Iowa fans that are there go crazy.
7,000. Well, is he going to dab like is that
that would be pretty awesome? Yeah,
that was 8 years ago, so that fad's probably been gone for 4 years. We just
true. I have no idea.
But, yeah, I don't have any idea either. But I think he's one area he has made an impact though, and it's kind of been overshadowed a little bit. Is he's a pretty salty tackler. And he's really good at that area. And I think next year I would expect him to be really an impact performer, because I saw the hit he laid on Kyle Monungai against Rutgers, and I mean, it took him out, and he was like blocking, and it was like, whoa, okay, welcome to the world here, and I think Xavier can impact the game coming down in the box, laying a hit on Blake Corum. Maybe it's not an interception, maybe it's that forced fumble, and then he walks over to the sidelines and feels like he's not a machine, he's a man, kind of like Tony did with against the Russians. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Get the Rocky analogies, the Hoosier analogies. We're really reaching here, Scott. But if you are making the trip to Indy, or if you're not, if you're at Tin Rooster, if you're in your living room, you may want to try to have a pour from Steeple Ridge Bourbon. From farm to bottle, Steeple Ridge Bourbon offers a high-quality, delicious drinking bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer or grocery store, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge, distilled, aged, bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. Scott, your folks at The Athletic have done a really good job on this sign stealing thing. It certainly is going to be a national storyline, probably on the broadcast. A lot of cameras going to be on Jim Harbaugh on Saturday. But I'm just kind of curious, what do you think? Pretty much since the sign stealing stuff broke, it was Michigan State. They plowed Michigan State 49-0. But then there was the bye week. And ever since then, Michigan's defense has at least proven a little bit vulnerable. 13 points against Purdue, 15, obviously Penn State, 24 Maryland, 24 Ohio State. Certainly better offenses across the board there than Iowa has. But, could there be something to that, or am I reaching a little bit?
I think we're reaching on it a little bit. I'd understand it. I think there's, if there is one area where they are a little bit weaker than they were 2 years ago, it's edge rusher. And when you have Aiden Hutchinson, who's awesome, and David Ojabo, who was really good that year too, and and guys like Mozzie Smith, and up the middle, and they really had some unbelievable dudes, at the front wall. They still have great players. They're Michigan, but it's not the same. And so I think the last 2 weeks they went up against potent offenses. Talia Tagovailoa, is a potent quarterback. He's had a lot of, he's now the record holder of most yards in Big Ten history. And last week, Marvin Harrison's the best receiver in the upcoming draft. And he'd probably be a Pro Bowler if he was even, on 25 different NFL teams. So I think that's, they're still only allowing 24 points. So, I think it's maybe a little wishful thinking, but you never know. Hopefully Iowa's got something that they haven't prepared for and they haven't seen all year. They're going to go southpaw here in the championship game. Yeah.
Is there any weird wrinkles or anything? Like a lot of people are saying, like, empty the playbook, Brian, and all this stuff. I don't know what that would be. Maybe they probably won't ever do it, but maybe a Marco Linus series where he's a mobile quarterback, and probably not the stage to do it. But I don't know. Anything jump out? I mean, we haven't seen a fake this year from the Hawks. I'm sure that, they expect Michigan so well schooled that they wouldn't be able to fool them on it. But do you try it anyway? I don't know. And what do you think? What if you're Brian Ferentz, LeVar Woods, whoever? What any little wrinkles you're throwing at Michigan this week to try to catch them off guard?
Well, you got to, if you're going to do anything, whether it's a fake or something crazy, you want to make sure that it's at a time when they're not expecting it. And the problem is that if it's 4th and 2 from the 50, they're probably going to expect it, or they're going to play for it and just say, what, if he's such a good punter anyway, it doesn't really matter, so we're going to play fake. And so that's not the time to fake, the one that I wish they would have done all year long is Wildcat, because I think they could play off of that. Now, of course, Cooper DeJean would have been the perfect Wildcat quarterback, but you don't have him, so there's no use worrying about it. But if Jazz Patterson could be next to LaShawn Williams, and if Jazz Patterson could take one of the receivers or something could take the handoff and, or the snap and fake the handoff and run, or handoff, maybe throw. That's to me something that maybe might work, but they're going to look at knowing Kirk and Brian, they're going to say that's too that's too gimmicky. So I don't know that they're going to do a whole lot. Maybe they'll have a pitch pass, a halfback pass. I don't know which running back can throw, but they did that 2 years ago and it almost worked. Do they have and I'm sure they're going to be prepared for that. I think it's probably more important that they're prepared for the opposite side because Michigan does that and is effective at it.
So I did pick Iowa to lose, picked them to score more points than people are anticipating. So I do have them covering. So I had 29-10. Michigan, do you have a score?
Yeah, I'm probably the most optimistic person you'll see on this. I have them 27-16 losing.
Okay.
So, maybe it's more of a backdoor, or I have, what I could be way off on this, but I think that they maybe compete. Maybe they get 3 field goals and then they're down 17-9 going into the fourth quarter. And then, maybe, that's 24-9. They score. Michigan gets a field goal at the end. Just something that's ho hum. I guess we're both looking for we root for stories first and foremost, and what's the best story for us to write? Iowa playing well, I guess I'm not rooting for victory. I don't do that because that doesn't matter. But for our readership and for all of you listening, the best story is having a good, positive game to write about. Not a moral victory, but just something that, hey, this team competed. That's what I want to see. I want to see a competitive game, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for it's not a moral victory, but I think it's the last game of East versus West. I think you want to see, if you're on Iowa's side, the West gave the East a fight.
Yeah,
gave them a battle, played maybe not toe to toe, but just played really well, played good football, not embarrassing football. Iowa had one of its worst games ever 2 years ago in Indy. It was just, you look at the PFF grades, they're just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But Michigan is really good. You need Iowa to be at whatever its best is this year. What was its best game this year? Maybe Rutgers. Potentially, I don't know. Probably, play like you did against Rutgers and take your chances. Scott, let's just entertain the possibility. What if Iowa wins? What if Iowa wins? What does that do? What happens? Obviously, Iowa goes to the New Year's Six, so they jump up in bowl, but they kind of ruin the playoff, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely, they do. I mean, because then you got everybody scrambling. Like, does Michigan stay in it? I mean, if it's a last-second field goal, do they deserve to fall out of it?
Yeah, they would fall out, I think.
Or
with the schedule they played,
yeah. Ohio State, what about the other games? I mean, it's all a wreck, and Iowa, flipped a booger on the windshield of the CFP, but I think, after that, there needs to be a parade in Iowa City and, probably commission that statue for Kirk Ferentz, which I've always said should be like at the Krause Family Plaza waving, Kirk Ferentz waving. I think that would be the perfect thing. Maybe it happens anyway, but not, but if that happens, Chad, bowl positioning, then they would be in the New Year's Six because the Big Ten champion qualifies. It would be most likely, that gives them 3 possibilities: the Atlanta, the Peach Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, and the Fiesta Bowl. They try to match up those teams against the like-minded or in the way they're ranked. So, if Iowa was fifth, like when they went to the Rose Bowl, they were fifth, and Stanford, I think, was sixth or seventh. And so that's why they played there. And if it would have been Ohio State higher, they wouldn't have played there. Chances are they're probably going to be the lowest ranked team in the New Year's Six, other than maybe the Group of 5 champion. So they'll probably play the Group of 5 champion, and that would be either in the Fiesta or Peach, most likely Peach Bowl. So because the Cotton had the G5 winner last year, so it won't this year. And so if it's like Tulane or SMU or possibly Liberty, it would be in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl.
Iowa, SMU, and the Peach Bowl. Padilla versus no, he's not playing, but he is at SMU. Alex Padilla,
Hayden Fry Bowl.
Yeah, right. There you go. So obviously, the anticipation is Iowa loses this game. So is Citrus Bowl it's certainly the heavy favorite here. But what are you looking for this weekend for bowl juggling for the Hawkeyes, assuming a loss to Michigan?
Okay. Let's say that the entire weekend goes as planned. And really, as planned means 3 of them don't matter. Georgia, Alabama, both teams are gone to the New Year's Six. The Washington, Oregon, both teams. The same thing with the ACC, because normally it wouldn't, but this year, because the Orange Bowl is a non-playoff year, that they get both, would get Louisville and Florida State's established enough. Whether they lose, Florida State loses, that's still in the New Year's Six. If not, it's in the championship bracket.
Right. So you're saying, for folks following, Florida State wins, it's in the playoff most likely, and then Louisville goes to the Orange. Louisville wins, then both get in the New Year's Six because they're good enough. So
Louisville's still in the Orange. Yeah. It's probably in the Orange anyway, either way, and then Florida State would be in the sugar, or I mean not sugar, but cotton or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead. The one that really impacts Iowa that it's not playing in is Big 12. And that's because of Oklahoma State. Texas is already in, no matter what. But if Oklahoma State wins, it would, like Iowa, qualify automatically for a New Year's Six spot, which would then kick out Penn State, which right now is the last at-large qualifier. If Penn State is in the New Year's Six, then that Iowa is locked in to the citrus. But if Penn State is let's say Oklahoma State wins, then Penn State will fall. The Citrus Bowl told me pretty much that Penn State would be their pick because they did beat Iowa and they're a pretty good team, which would then send Iowa to either A, the ReliaQuest Bowl, or B, the Vegas Bowl. Now, what would determine that is whether or not a Big Ten team appears in the Orange Bowl. Now, if we're going by chalk outcome, is Ohio State is probably going to the Orange Bowl, which means the Big Ten vacates the ReliaQuest, which is formerly known as the Outback. And then if Penn State would fall, then that would put Iowa in the Vegas Bowl. However, if, let's say, craziness happens, Ohio State ends up in the New Year's Six, then Bama ends up there, then, Iowa could still end up in the citrus. But what if Penn State falls? Then that would be the one opportunity to go to Tampa again for the ReliaQuest. So overall, if Iowa loses, I would say 75% chance to the citrus, 20% chance to the Vegas, and 5% chance to Tampa Bay. But
all right.
But I do think Orlando is the most likely destination. So would you take your family to Disney?
It's on the table. It's on the table. We'll have to see.
I hope they're not around and listen to this.
No. They're at school.
Christmas surprise. Sorry.
They're at school and they don't listen to my podcast.
Okay. Good. Didn't want to ruin it for you. Sorry.
No.
Delete.
We'll see. But good analysis there, Scott. You always do a great job with the bowl stuff. And my read on it is very similar as well. I'd be surprised if Oklahoma State beats Texas.
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe I would bump up the citrus percentage personally to 85 or so. But, who knows? Maybe the Big 12 doesn't want Texas to get the glory, but you'd think they'd want them in though.
I got holding on 78 white, remember the Titans.
All right.
Well, back up if you want to stay in this game, Coach.
Yeah. Good movie references in this podcast.
Right.
All right. Well, looking forward to we get to ride together to Indy. So looking forward to that, Scott, this weekend because my buddy Tyler's on his way to Indiana today. So he's, of course, an Indiana alum, as we know. So he's going to get a little more time in his beloved state, his beloved Hoosier state.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the drive, though. We'll talk more about the Bears or something.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk half of it will be about this game, a third of it will be about the Bears, and the rest will be, oh man, I wish the semi get out of the way.
Watch the speed zone. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Aiden, for letting us go a little bit long here. We do want to let you know that we're planning tentatively. We'll let you know for sure. Our next show will actually be Monday next week because just the freshness of the Big Ten championship, the freshness of the bowl announcement, and kind of looking ahead to Cyhawk hoops next week. So 11 a.m. Monday is our tentative plan. Thanks, Scott, and talk to you soon.